Well, hey there, and welcome to Wedding Planning Simplified. I'm Amy from Unmistakably You, and I'm a wedding planner and educator here in lovely London, Ontario. I don't usually go live on Tuesday night at 7:30. Normally, I am with you here live in the group on Sundays at 1. And for anybody who was keeping up with that, you know that I was actually on vacation last week and I still tried to do a video for you. I tried to record a video and to pre-post it because I was actually doing a wine tasting on Sunday at 1 and I didn't have enough signal to make all of the tech talk to each other. And the video that I recorded, while brilliant and insightful, I'm sure, was choppy and blurry, and you wouldn't have gotten anything out of it at all had I posted it. So here I am. I promised that I would pop in today and cover the material that I would have covered on Sunday had I been here with you. So as always, if you are joining me live, say hi. I would love to hear from you. If I say anything that resonates, please let me know. If you have questions, pop them in the comments. If you're catching us on the replay, don't hesitate to either comment or send me a private message or an email, amy@unmistakably.you. We are here to help you with your wedding plans. And that's why we've launched this series called Honest August. So if you've been joining us for the past couple of weeks, we've talked about a few things that you may have encountered in your wedding planning. Our goal is always to try to help you navigate the planning with some grace and a little bit less stress. And there are some things out there that you may be completely bewildered by, or you may feel like you're the odd one out of this wedding planning club. And so our goal is to help you to navigate some of these things through shedding a little bit of light on a few issues and dropping a couple of truth bombs here and there. So today's episode of Honest August is the wedding wrecker nobody tells you about. And I feel like I should have some dramatic theme music going on here. Unfortunately, I don't. But the wedding wrecker that nobody tells you about is not your Uncle Bob hitting the bar too hard. The wedding wrecker that nobody tells you about, and this is potentially overly dramatic, but it's the wind. So if you are having any element of your wedding outside, whether it's your ceremony, your photos, your reception, you want to think about the effect that the wind is going to have on you. I mean, we meet with lots of couples who are planning beautiful tent weddings or planning al fresco events under the stars, and they've thought through a good solid rain plan, absolutely. They've even sometimes thought about what if it's really cool at night, or what if it's really buggy by the woods. But oftentimes, nobody really puts wind on the radar. And the reason that I wanted to devote an entire episode of our Honest August to the wind is that it's always there in some capacity. It's very uncommon that we have a completely still day, and you do need to account for the effect that that wind is going to have on you if you're doing, like I said, any part of your ceremony outdoors, or any part of your day rather, your ceremony, your photos, any part of your reception outdoors. You want to account for that wind. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick things, some ideas to put on your radar. If you're having a completely indoor day, hi, it was nice to see you, but you don't need to listen anymore. If you're having any component outside, though, do take a few things into account. So when it comes to ceremony and photos outdoors, with regard to the wind, the things that you'll probably be most affected by are attire related. So clothing, and to an extent, hair and makeup as well. So if you're doing a ceremony outside, particularly if it's in a big open space or if it's on the shore of a body of water, I love me a good beach wedding, but you know that there's always going to be some kind of wind associated with a lake or an ocean or a bay. You know, usually there's some wind that's a factor. So if you are outside for your ceremony and there's the potential that it's going to be windy, you'll want to think about whether or not you're going to wear a veil. So that's something that is beautiful, absolutely, but it basically creates a big wind sail. If it happens to be windy, I have seen veils whipping around brides' heads. I have seen them getting, flipped over their faces and tangled up with their partner. I've seen them blown right out of your hairstyle. So thinking about securing that veil, or maybe, hate to say it, Maybe foregoing the veil if you're doing an outdoor ceremony. Maybe you get a beautiful clip or a hairpiece of some kind and you forego the veil. If you do go with a veil outdoors, though, a couple of things to keep in mind. One, a really long veil might help you combat a light breeze in that it's a lot heavier because there's that weight, especially if it's a cathedral veil and it's dragging on the ground. It's kind of anchoring it and avoiding the wind picking it up like it would a fingertip veil or a shorter, like elbow length veil. There are also veil weights that you can buy if you'd like to still go ahead with a veil outdoors. They're just little decorative, they almost look like jewels that you actually can purchase at a number of different retailers, seamstresses, alterations places, or online. And they just fasten into the hem of your veil and they will weight it down a little bit, which will help if it's a mild breeze. The other thing that you'll want to think about is attire. If there are females in your wedding party and they're wearing short dresses, they're more so problematic than long dresses. You want to think about whether or not there's likely to be wind at your ceremony or during your photos that could lead to some unfortunate Marilyn Monroe kind of wardrobe malfunctions. So think about maybe keeping any females in your wedding party in long gowns if you are planning to do an outdoor ceremony or photos. Or making sure they have appropriate undergarments underneath if it does happen to get caught by a little breeze. The other thing that's not specifically attire related, but it's in the same category, is thinking about hair. So if you're going to be outdoors for any part of your day and there's likely to be a breeze, think about the hairstyle that you're choosing and consider whether or not it's going to be dramatically affected if there is any level of a breeze, from just a light little wisp to full on, monsoon force winds, because I've seen it all. And if you're likely to catch some wind, you might want to think about doing an updo. You might want to think about doing an updo that's fairly well secured. Communicate that with your hairstylist and think about what's going to be flattering to you, obviously, but also secure enough that it's going to withstand a little bit of wind. I certainly don't want you to have that hairspray helmet head, but thinking about avoiding flyaways is definitely something that you want to talk to your stylist about. Now, what's potentially a bigger issue is your reception. If you're doing a tented reception or an outdoor alfresco reception, there are a number of elements of it that are going to be affected if there is wind. If you're inside a barn or if you're in a drive shed, let's say, on private property, probably not so much of an issue. But we do a lot of tent weddings and we see the effect of tents creating sort of like a wind tunnel. So tents are great and functional and they provide shelter from the elements that you may have thought about, like the rain. But they don't provide much shelter from the wind unless you're able to find a tent that has all four sides up. So tent walls tend to, on most tents, be detachable. They're not quickly retractable. They don't slide along any kind of like a curtain rod. Most tents have a clip system up at the top of the walls, and so you can completely unclip them and remove the sides entirely. Oftentimes you can unclip half of a wall and kind of fold it back on itself. But you don't usually have really quick options to either close the walls or open the walls, depending on the weather. So tents can have the effect of shielding your contents, your tables, your chairs, your linens, your stationery from the wind. But if you have the walls up on all sides of your tent, you're shielding from the wind, but you're also creating kind of like a little greenhouse effect, especially if you have one of those beautiful clear span tents. They're lovely. You can see the night sky. You can look up at the stars. But if it's a hot day, they do kind of act like a greenhouse. So usually what we see our couples wanting is, if it's a warm day, as Southern Ontario tends to be in July, August, September, most couples are going to want to take those tent walls either completely down or to have them largely open so that they can facilitate some airflow through the tent to keep people cool. Makes total sense. But what you don't account for is the impact that that's going to have on your florals, on your stationery, and on your linens. So let's talk florals first. Florals are, as you know, my favorite part of a wedding. In many cases, I love the moment when the florals come in and get set up because it just transforms a venue, in my opinion. But flowers have mass. There's a fair amount of surface area there, particularly if you're having a large spray put on an arbor for a ceremony, or if you've got tall centerpieces, or if you're using any kind of trailing greens or wispy pampas grass or something like that, which is a very popular look right now. What you're doing is increasing the surface area and unfortunately making it more likely that a gust of wind is going to come and either pick up that piece of pampas grass and take it out of your arrangement, or take hold of the whole arrangement and topple it over. So think about, if you're doing an outdoor or tented wedding, think about perhaps keeping your centerpieces low so that their center of gravity is lower and they're less likely to fall over if they do catch wind. If you're doing big ceremony or arbor arrangements, think about keeping them tucked into the structure. So if you've got an arbor or an archway, try to mirror the shape of the archway with the flowers instead of having the flowers sticking out and creating a lot more surface area than the archway has. You'll also really want to make sure that that archway or arbor is fastened down really securely. I had a beautiful hexagonal arbor a few weeks ago. If you scroll down in the feed, you'll see pictures of it. And as soon as that baby's breath got attached, it was like a sail and it caught the wind and it actually snapped the base of the arbor, which was constructed out of 2x4s. Like, this was a pretty strong thing that the groom had made, and it was heavy, and it physically snapped the 2x4s just because of that increased surface area of the baby's breath. So think about keeping your flowers compact where possible if you're doing it outdoors, and think about keeping their center of gravity low. The next thing I mentioned was stationery and its effect with the wind. If you're doing any kind of signage, like a welcome sign or an itinerary sign or something like that, it's beautiful to have it printed up to match your stationery. Maybe you put it on foam core. Maybe you do one of those lovely acrylic signs with the back painting. The issue is that none of those really have very much weight. And once you put them up on an easel, you've just created a big surface that's going to catch the wind and most likely blow over. So if it is gusty at all, those signs are going to topple. They're going to get crinkled as they hit the ground. They're going to get dirty. So think about keeping your signage low and heavy. If you have any wood elements in your decor, it's a really great opportunity to incorporate some wood signage to carry those elements through. You know, I'm always talking about creating cohesive decor by repeating elements. If you've got some wood in your design, use wood for your signs. If you're going rustic, maybe use old pallets, something that you can maybe prop up against a tree, or you can lean up against an old milk can or something like that. Create a low display where it's anchored by heavy items that aren't going to blow over. You know, you can even fasten your signage to a tree, you know, nail a wood sign to a tree, or zip tie it to, put wire hangers somehow on the back of it and zip tie it to a stationary piece of furniture that isn't going to catch the wind. When it comes to your actual table stationery, we're seeing a lot of those lovely acrylic table numbers right now. So they're about a 5x7 piece of acrylic, you know, the ones they've got a lovely number on it and then it's back painted in the color of your wedding. It's usually in a very small, very light wood stand with a slot that holds it up. Lovely. Except that, again, if a gust of wind comes through your tent, that's the first thing to fall over because it's very, very light and it comparatively has a fair amount of surface area to it. So a couple of things that you can do. One, if you are using those kinds of table numbers, find something to prop it up against. So if you're doing, for instance, let's say, cylinder vases with candles in them, prop your centerpiece or your table number sign up against that centerpiece so that it's not going to fall over if a gust of wind does come through. You can also use heavy frames for your table numbers. Again, you can use wood table numbers. Keeping them low and keeping them heavy is going to help secure them and prevent gusts of wind from picking them up. Other stationery that you'll normally see in your reception tent or on your reception tables are going to be some kind of place cards. It's pretty typical to see those small tent folded place cards. Often if you're doing a plated meal, your caterer needs them to identify which meal choice your guests get. Those are very easily picked up and carried away by even the slightest breeze. So if you can figure out a way to weight down those table numbers, whether it's, if you're going with paper, tucking them under a favor. Maybe you've got, some kind of jam jar or something where you can weight that place card down with something heavy on top of it. Or if you've got a favor like a jam jar or a bottle of maple syrup or something like that, that you can actually tie your place cards to. It's a little bit more cumbersome when you're putting them out on the tables, but at least then they've got some weight. They're attached to something solid, so they're not going to pick up and fly away. Because I can't tell you the number of times we've done everything we can to tuck place cards underneath glasses or something like that, and a big gust comes through the tent, and all of a sudden we're running around chasing place cards. If you can find a way to make them out of wood, I'm seeing some lovely laser cut wood place cards these days done with CNC machines. Just be mindful that you're using heavy wood there as well. Some of them can be pretty light. Also, if you're doing any kind of natural element, maybe you're doing something really industrial, maybe you can use really sort of rugged chunks of concrete or rock, or maybe get some smooth river rocks and write names on those with a metallic Sharpie and use those as your place cards. There's no way those are getting picked up and flying away. The other benefit to using a heavy weighted down place card or a favor is that it can also help anchor your napkins. So linens are something else you'll want to be mindful of if you're doing an outdoor wedding. Your linens are going to be quite light. And also if you're talking about a tablecloth, there's a big surface area to catch the wind. So if you've got napkins, linen napkins on your tables, find ways to weight those down. Maybe it's using a charger plate and putting the napkin underneath the charger plate so that it's waterfall over the side and you can still see the napkin, but it's being anchored by that charger plate. Maybe you tie it into a knot so that it increases the density of that napkin and it's less likely that it's going to get picked up. Maybe you want to put it in your glasses. I don't do this as much anymore. It's a little bit more of a just a little more outdated look, but it can help anchor that napkin. The issue, though, is again that you're then bringing it up higher off the table and running the risk that the wind will catch it if it is a quite strong gust. So think about ways to anchor down your napkins, and then think about your actual table linens. If you're using full-length tablecloths, I see this often being more of a problem on cruiser tables that are more frequently outside of a tent if you're trying to encourage an outdoor cocktail area. And then you've got these cruiser tables, the bar height tables, where often you'll put a 120-inch round linen on them. They go to the floor on a 36-inch cruiser table. And if you don't have those tablecloths anchored, they can pick up the wind, and I've seen them fly across fields. So often what we'll do if it's windy is to cinch in those linens, which is not a very attractive look unless you've done it intentionally. So pre-plan for the possibility of wind. And if you're having cruiser tables outside, either try to get spandex linens. Those are the ones that are going to be form-fitting and they're going to tuck right underneath the feet of the table. Or if you're planning on cinching in a standard 120-inch round linen, you can zip tie it in, but then plan for something pretty to cover that zip tie, whether it's some greenery from your florist, whether it's ribbon, just something to make it look a little more intentional and less functional. I have definitely seen cruiser tables get picked up and knocked over. There was one wedding we did last year where it was the perfect storm of all the things I've talked about. We had big flowers and we had pampas grass and we had paper table numbers and place cards and we had cruiser tables with linens, and we just played pick up the stuff all day because it was just so windy. I felt horrible for that florist. She was trying to do these big, beautiful installations, and it was just, they were flying apart as the wind caught the flowers. So the wedding wrecker nobody tells you about is the wind. It has not been my friend this season, but if you are mindful that this is likely to be an issue if you're doing any element of your day outdoors, I think you can do a little bit of planning that will save you a lot of headache in the end. It will also save anybody who's doing your setup a lot of headache in the end. So thank you as always for joining me. I encourage you to reach out and let me know if you saw the video. Let me know if I said anything intelligent. Let me know if I totally tripped over my words and confused you and I've created more of a mess than I've helped with. I look forward to hearing any kind of feedback from you, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday when I should be in a good Wi-Fi signal, and I will be able to do the regular Sunday at 1 o'clock live, where we're going to be talking about setting realistic expectations. So I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week and take care. Happy planning.